And we're live. Sorry, is that okay? Okay, I'm doing it anyway. Okay, so there's a fascinating idea which is found in this week's portion. This is not a Parsha thing though. I mean, it's on the Parsha, but you could use it your whole life. Listen to the following idea. The Gemara says in Makos, a lot of fascinating things, but I want to share with you something before that. The Medrash tells us that there was once a man, and this guy was an alcoholic. He loved alcohol, hence him being an alcoholic. And he got into a situation where he was totally abusing it, like crazy. And he ended up throwing away his money, throwing away his family. It was getting really, really bad. Selling him to the point where he basically selling his possessions in order to get a lot of stuff. His family then said to him, well, we had the interventions and trying to do discussions, and he didn't listen to anything. He wouldn't listen to anything that was being told to him. So what they did is they said the following idea. What they did is when he was totally hammered one night, they tied him up and they brought him to a cemetery. They put him down in the cemetery like a grave as he's tied up in the thing. And they're hoping that when he wakes up, he's going to open his eyes, he's going to see he's in a cemetery, and then he'll know how low he went, right? He's going to realize how bad it was. And maybe then, God willing, he's going to change his ways, right? If a person sees how low they've gone, maybe they can change their ways. So what happens? As he's there in the cemetery, tied up at night, totally wasted, trashed off his mind, go on, he's lying there, he's tied up, and passes by on the side of the cemetery a wagon. A wagon passes by, and on the back of the wagon is a bunch of barrels. They're filled with barrels, and it's barrels of wine. And as it's passing by the cemetery, a bunch of bandits, thieves, criminals, crooks, what they do is they attack the wagon in order to steal the stuff. And as they jump on, a fight ensues. And during the midst of the fight, as they're trying to go by, one of the barrels comes loose, and it starts rolling through the cemetery, and it stops right by the head of this fellow, this alcoholic who's totally wasted. Okay, that goes on and that's done with. Next morning he opens his eyes, he wakes up and he sees next to him, he knows he's tied up, and he sees his barrel next to him. So he reaches over with his mouth, he pulls out the cork, and he chugs the barrel. And he gets toasted. And an hour later his family shows up, expecting to see him all sobered up and understand what life is about. And there's an empty barrel of wine and the guy's completely gone. This, my friends, is the Medrash. The Medrash tells us, based off the Gemara that's found in Makos on page 10b, off this week's portion, which happens to be Parshat Balak, that what happens in the beginning is that God comes to Balak and he says to him, okay, with that background, you have to look it up yourselves, okay? If you're not holding, okay. But the bottom line is look it up. You'll see in Parshat Balak, right at the beginning, a guy named Balak. And Balak and Balaam. Balak is one of the people who's going to maybe curse the Jewish people. Balaam calls Balak to go and do it. And Balak basically says, no, listen, I can't do whatever God says. I can only listen to God. I'm not coming. And God basically says to him, says the Gemara, I mean, it's based off this particular, he says, Lo Seilech Imam. God says to Balak, don't go with these people. Balaam had come to Balak to get him to come with him to go curse the Jewish people. And God says, Lo Seilech Imam, don't go with them. A couple of psukim later, though, what happens? He then says, Kum lechitam, go with them, walk with them. The question is, what do you mean? You just said, don't go with them. Now all of a sudden you're saying, go with them. And very famously comes along the Gemara, and the previous line says, in the way that a person wants to go, God leads them. Meaning to say what? You have opportunities. In your life, you'll always have opportunities. Everybody has opportunities in their life. And God gives every person the opportunity. What opportunities are they given? Whatever they want. Essentially, any opportunity you want will arise. Now, that doesn't mean God is going to pull you through. That's only with positive things. When it's positive things, then God is going to actually open the door and bring you in. But in a situation where it's negative, at least you will be led in that way. You'll have the opportunity to do it. This guy who wanted to get hammered, so he gave him the opportunity he's going to get hammered. Balak wanted to go with Balaam. He wanted to do it. So God said, okay, if you want to do it, I'm going to let you do it. I'm saying not to. You really want to? Okay, I'm going to let you do it. Very often when we have situations in our life that we think, like, okay, we're good. At least see the opportunity is open for us. Now that means that it's good, right? Because if it wasn't good, would God allow me, would he even let me do such a thing? The answer is, if you're a tzaddik gamor, no. But being that but if you're not a tzaddik gamor, right, then the answer, if one wouldn't be, then the answer is absolutely. God gives anyone the opportunities that they want. And you just have to open your eyes to see whether or not you should be going with it. Just because it's there doesn't mean it's the right thing. We first have to work it out. So let me just add one more idea, a little bit more, just a bit, actually on last week's portion, just a bit, but it doesn't have to be last week's, it's the whole idea. So we have basically something called cheshbon nefesh. The Torah tells us that, whatever the background, you'll look it up again, but we got to do a cheshbon. We got to evaluate our soul. Comes along the Dubna Mawa. We wakid. And the Dubna Magni says an amazing mashal. Listen to the mashal. He said that there was once a king, and the king was walking through the forest, and he noticed on the forest that there were a lot of bows and arrows. Arrows that were like in, what do you call those things? Bullseyes, right? In the Hebrew, I think they call it bull. And the guy hit the bullseye every time. The arrow was right in the middle of the bullseye every time. So this king is looking, who is this archer? We got to get him for our force. You know what I'm saying? So what happens, he goes around, and he figures out it's this kid. It's a 9-year-old kid who's nailing every single time right in the middle. So he finally finds this kid. He goes, "All right, kid, you're in my army." He's like, "No, Your Majesty, you don't understand." He goes, "No, excuse me, you're in my army." He goes, "No, Your Majesty, you don't get it." He goes, "Kid, I'm sorry, you're in the army. Your Majesty, please, can I say something?" He says, "Okay, fine, what do you want to say?" He says, "I'm not a good archer. I go in the forest, I shoot arrows. Wherever they land, I then draw a bullseye around it, so that I get it perfect every time." So how does that work? Same thing here. Very often what we do is we go and we live our life a certain way. We want our life to be a certain way. Therefore, we start living it, and then we start drawing a bullseye around it. See, God wanted it to be this way, otherwise I wouldn't have had this opportunity. Answer is that's not true. God gives you the opportunities whenever you want. We have to know that we have to do the cheshbon. We have to evaluate before we're going out and doing something. What's right, what's wrong. Once we figure out what's right and what's wrong, then we can see more clearly that there's opportunities that are coming our way, whether or not we should be going with them. If you have no idea what's right and what's wrong, you're just living in the way you want to go, okay, it's going to be open for you. Therefore, just as a sikum, as a summary, what does we got to do? Number one, get clarity. Figure it out what is right, what is wrong, which way you want to be going. Not just want, but that you should be going. Then once you get that down, now start aligning that which you should be doing with what you want to be doing. And then, person starts with what he wants, what he needs, what he knows he should, and then he adds it on to what he wants. God gives you the opportunity. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.